I'm just in time, and I have not always been just in time, so I chose this name maybe 15 years ago now, and also chose gender. So by now I use male pronouns, and I didn't in the past, but I feel it fits better, or it's also a statement to use male pronouns that might not entirely fit the expectation when you look at me, whatever. Yeah, this is clear. And it's also a feminist statement. If we talk about feminism, it's where it starts. Maybe it doesn't even start here, but it's also a feminist statement to me. I grew up in southern Germany in a white middle-class family in a small town in the middle of nowhere where feminism and queerness didn't exist in the 70s and 80s, and I was very glad to escape at some point. And I started my first profession as a stonemason, which was also a feminist statement actually, because it broke with all the expectations of you're a girl and you're not supposed to do this handcraft, and it's I admit it's hard work sometimes, but I guess that's also what I like, the challenge. And I like handcrafts, and I also like the material. So this was my first exit, maybe. And after that, I went on a traditional journey for 3 years. In Germany, they call it Waltz. It's like compagnonnage in France, only a bit different. So it's not as organized, it's more like you go on your own and you explore the world and you go travel and work in different places. And I think this was also a very important time for me. And I learned a lot about the world and social networks and how groups function, and I thought about also about who's in and who's out, and why, and codes like clothes or language and so on. And this might be the most important foundation or learning experience that I still take my inspirations from, or my thoughts, or how I see the world. And then I went to art school and studied sculpture, but then realized I'm not really interested in it anymore, and then started doing experimental film. At that time it was about gender and a lot about cowboy performances. So then I had quite an extended period of exploring male gender roles through the image of cowboys. I went to San Francisco to talking about privilege, quite a privileged art school, to the San Francisco Art Institute. That was the most shocking experience, was how expensive it was and how it excludes people just by being so expensive, which in Germany you don't pay for your art school education. But still, of course, who has access to an art school and who doesn't is also very interesting. Nevertheless, it was also a great experience because my professors there understood why I'm interested in working with gender in my art school here. At that time, nobody did. It was before it became mainstream. And when you wanted to challenge wordings and so on, or gender performances, and was they didn't get it. So it was also a hard time and challenging, and it was also during that time that I decided to change my name and my pronoun. And by then I said, I don't feel like I'm a woman, but I'm sure I'm a feminist, because to me this was also something, and it still is, that I believe in, or that I feel is super important to, it's like a starting point to look at the world, or to challenge hierarchies and power dynamics, and I guess it will never stop. I forgot. What else? Background missions. Oh, oppressions. Yeah, well, yeah, being perceived female in handcrafts, or I would say also sometimes in the art world, is not so much fun, and being transgender isn't either. But on the other hand, living in Berlin, it's also quite a great place to, there is more freedom, or there's simply more space, so I can walk around and feel quite normal in this town, which I can't in many other places in the world. But it's also a decision that I can make, and it's yeah. Yeah, I have lived in Berlin now for 20 years. Since 10 years I live in Kreuzberg, and I'm quite well networked, I would say. I have friends that are very important to me, and a community of queer feminist people. I'm working in a house that's Die Lause. It's a network, I would say, of artists and political institutions and people who work in crafts, and so it's quite colorful. Since a few years, also very self-organized context that's also involved in neighborhood politics and fighting for lower rents and keeping Berlin livable, and yeah. And I also teach dancing. I love to go ballroom dancing, and that's also community building to me. And yeah, I think to me it's easier to think in districts than in the broad spectrum, because it's easier to be involved in neighborhood politics than if it's too large. It's sometimes overwhelming, or it gets difficult, or if the politics is on a too broad scale, then sometimes can be very frustrating because you don't get very far. So it's sometimes easier to be involved in smaller circles, to me. Mm-hmm. And I live in Germany, even though I sometimes I'm not so excited about many German cultural attitudes, but yeah, that's where I live right now. Yeah, I guess to me you cannot really separate personal or collective because it's always somehow the same. And to whom am I speaking? To me it's always, well, I've started doing cowboy performances, but since 10 years now, at least, I've more and more worked in experimental documentary films. Somehow I dropped the gender performance stuff since it's become popular. And I'm, even though it seems as if I have taken a different road, somehow I still feel my topics are the same, or my missions maybe, and this means that I'm also very interested in gathering many voices, like you do with your archive, I would think. So with my films I try to talk to as many people as possible and to cover one topic from many different perspectives. And this is who I involve in my films, but it's also whom I'm interested in as the audience. Like I also have problems with an art-exclusive context, so this is not really what's interesting to me. So I also like to work in public space. Like last year we did a sound installation in a park about a monument that had been in the park. It was the monument for the pigeons from World War I that the Nazis built, and they built a monument. And we built this sound installation about this in the park that talked to the people who came there. So there were many different people from Turkish families to random people who passes by, and that to me is the most interesting, to reach out to people who are not either a queer scene or are an art scene or are supposedly think more or less in a bubble, but to reach out to basically everybody. So I also once made a film in a village in Wales, and then I brought it back there, and then we talked about it the whole night, and it was amazing because almost the whole village showed up and they were so interested, and then you get involved with people who you would never meet otherwise. This is also to me the beauty of making art, because it gets me to places and gets me to talk to people who I would not be able to meet. This maybe also coming back to my Auf der Walz, this compagnonnage thing. You also go to places and you work there and you meet people and meet strangers who are strange because they think differently from me, and this is very exciting, and this is something that I wish that there would be more interaction and not so much, oh, you think different from me, so we have nothing to do with each other, because then you can maybe find something that you do have in common, even though you like each other, even though you have very different opinions. And this is something that I love about my work, and that I also want to get across somehow, or I want to open up the space rather than to narrow it down. Yeah, so for example, my current film is a film about Marx monuments and what they mean to people in East and West Germany, or why they are still built, or why they should be taken down or not, or why Marx is still important to people currently. And I traveled to places, and I tried to talk to many different people from politics or from activism or from just from their personal point of view, and then I assemble them into a film, and then I bring this film ideally back to the place and then get people to discuss again. And that's how I would hope it would be. So I then use this as something to maybe basically start over again and then get more conversations over there, and involve, for example, with this film, involve people who come from politics or from theory or from historians, for example, and then bring them together and use my film as a starting point for another discussion, and confront elements with each other that might not otherwise have anything to do with each other before, because they might never have gotten in touch. So I throw them together in my film, or I bring them together in a room, and then that's how I enjoy to work, or how I to engage. Yeah. Yes, I am, and will always be, no matter what my gender will be. Yes. Because, I don't know, feminism to me also means, this is not the short answer to your question, but feminism is much more than being about women. It's about the whole world. It's about fighting against injustice. And that's one definition of feminism that I really liked very much, that if there is still one person that's oppressed, we're not done with the work yet. And I guess this will take a little longer than my lifetime, but there's always something to do. Yes, I'm a feminist.